You were just a street racer. You were just a builder. You were just a personal trainer. You were just an electrician. You were just... Stop.
Hello, humans. Skeletor-level irony here, a plumber in ancient Rome, a barber during the Black Death, and somehow this is peak AI content now. Watch until the end to find out what a smart skeleton thinks about the absurdity of this trend. It's embarrassing for civilization, but also extremely watchable. The second you see a modern human dropped into the worst possible century, your brain locks in like it just found free dopamine in the wild. You don't need explanation, you don't need a historian in a tweed jacket begging you to care, you just need one cursed image. A guy who knows what Wi-Fi is standing in a street where public sanitation is optional and disease is basically weather. Suddenly, history isn't boring. Now, it is one modern idiot trying to survive in a timeline with absolutely no customer support, no antibiotics, and definitely no concept of circle back next week. That is the magic. We're weaponizing the question, what if someone from now got dropped into a century that absolutely did not deserve them? These videos work because your brain gets the joke in about half a second. Modern guy, ancient world, immediate disaster. That is it. That is the machine. You do not need setup because the setup is the image. A man with modern posture and the energy of someone who has complained about delivery apps is suddenly standing in a civilization of dust and stone. Your brain fills in the rest. How is he surviving? How long before he gets accused of witchcraft? That is why the format hits so hard. It begins with collision. Two realities slam into each other, and the viewer immediately understands the tension. One image contains the joke, the conflict, and the plot. This format just walks in wearing sandals from the wrong century and gets your focus for free. Because we can't resist a modern idiot entering a pre-industrial crisis. The real fuel here is contrast. Modern haircut, ancient dirt, smartphone face, horse cart civilization. A guy with the body language of someone who has definitely used Google Maps standing where directions are basically walk toward the smell. Your brain loves that mismatch. One side has modern habits and confidence. The other side has plague, mud, and infrastructure that would make a 2025 electrician start screaming. That gap is doing all the work. It creates curiosity and a tiny voice that whispers, "Okay, but honestly, would I dominate there?" Probably not. You'd die from a preventable infection after trying to explain basic hygiene to a man who thinks soap is suspicious. But the fantasy hits. Because contrast is not just visual. It is narrative cocaine. That's the whole trick. Before AI, this idea needed costumes, actors, sets, money, time, and an exhausted editor losing faith at 2 a.m. Now it needs a prompt and a machine willing to hallucinate with absolutely no shame. That changes everything. Once production is cheap, absurdity becomes scalable. Suddenly you can test a plumber in ancient Rome, a tattoo artist in feudal Japan, a social media manager in medieval Europe, and a barber during the Black Death before lunch like a cursed content scientist. And it works. The format is funny before the AI is even perfect. A little weirdness helps. Slight uncanny energy makes the whole thing more watchable. Viewers scan the frame like, why does this Roman bricklayer definitely own a Bluetooth speaker? That's the cheat code. AI didn't invent the idea. It just made it fast, cheap, and impossible for the internet to leave alone. This format does something deeply unfair to history. It makes people care. Normally, history sits in people's heads like dusty homework and dead kings. But the second you turn it into, what if a modern idiot had to survive there? The whole thing wakes up. Now, the past is not abstract. It is immediate. It is social. It is embarrassing. It is one guy with modern habits trying to explain basic hygiene to people who think disease is either destiny or suspicious air. It makes history personal because you're being asked to imagine yourself inside it. Could I survive there? Would I adapt? Would I become a genius or just the most annoying person in the city by explaining indoor plumbing too aggressively? That shift is powerful. It makes the past a stress test for modern identity and way more clickable. And this is where the trend gets even more dangerous. It is not just comedy, it is fantasy. You are not only watching a modern builder in Rome or a barber in plague times, your brain is quietly running a private simulation like, okay, but if that were me, would I dominate there or die immediately? That is a very powerful little drug because these videos do not just offer jokes. They offer self-insert daydreams with historical dust on them. Maybe I would be the smart one there. Maybe my basic 2025 knowledge would make me look like a wizard, an engineer, or at least the only person in town who understands that contaminated water is not a personality trait. That fantasy is ridiculously addictive. It flatters the viewer while pretending to be a joke. A huge reason this trend works is that it flatters modern identity. A guy with basic 2025 knowledge can feel like a genius next to medieval plumbing, or a village whose medical strategy is try vibes and pray. That fantasy is doing serious work. These videos suggest modern people are superior in ways that feel funny and satisfying. You're watching a person armed with modern instincts looking suspiciously overpowered in a world of candles and mud. It's a tiny ego boost disguised as comedy. Maybe your brain would actually dominate if history gave you one clean shot and a water filter, which is obviously delusional in many cases. But the format understands. People love stories where ordinary modern knowledge looks like elite wizard behavior, especially if the wizard is also confused, annoyed, and trying not to get arrested. This format is algorithm catnip, instantly readable, visually strong, and built around one clickable question. What happens when this person ends up here? It's perfect platform food. The viewer understands the premise immediately, but they still want the payoff. That's the sweet spot. Too simple and they swipe. Too complex and they never enter. This format lands right in the middle, a cursed little masterpiece of content engineering. It gives the algorithm exactly what it wants: fast comprehension, strong contrast, and a built-in narrative engine. The thumbnail is obvious. The curiosity is automatic. Because each variation feels familiar, the format keeps mutating. Plumber in Rome, electrician in the 1700s, same skeleton, different historical panic. That repeatability is gold. It's dumb enough to scroll, smart enough to remember, and flexible enough to keep feeding the machine long after it's been buried. Creators keep milking this format because, frankly, it is content Lego. It is modular, cheap, viral, and almost insultingly easy to remix. Once you find one version that works, the rest practically breed in captivity. You swap the job, swap the century, keep the contrast, keep the chaos, and suddenly you have another video ready to go. With the structural integrity of a copied homework answer and the engagement potential of a minor digital drug. That is why the trend keeps spreading. It is not just because people like it. It is because creators can manufacture it at scale without needing new logic every time. The system is already built. Modern role plus historical setting plus instant friction equals content. Again and again and again. Until the feed starts looking like a museum gift shop run by prompt engineers. Hello humans. Skeletor-level irony here, a plumber in ancient Rome, a barber during the Black Death, and somehow this is peak AI content now. Watch until the end to find out what a smart skeleton thinks about the absurdity of this trend. It's embarrassing for civilization, but also extremely watchable. The second you see a modern human dropped into the worst possible century, your brain locks in like it just found free dopamine in the wild. You don't need explanation, you don't need a historian in a tweed jacket begging you to care, you just need one cursed image. A guy who knows what Wi-Fi is standing in a street where public sanitation is optional and disease is basically weather. Suddenly, history isn't boring. Now, it is one modern idiot trying to survive in a timeline with absolutely no customer support, no antibiotics, and definitely no concept of circle back next week. That is the magic. We're weaponizing the question, what if someone from now got dropped into a century that absolutely did not deserve them?